Hi, everybody. It's me, Kristie Clayton, here with ConvHERsations with Kristie. And today we are talking to Rachel Lebowitz. I'm so excited to have Rachel on our episode today. So if you haven't had the pleasure, or if I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, I am Kristie Clayton, like I said, and I am the founder of HERverse. HER is an acronym that stands for Helping Executives Rise. And we do that in 3 ways. We have a community for second in command leaders, which is called Female Executive Mastermind, or FEM. We have a community for leadership team members that report to a second in command leader called Lead Her. And then we have executive coaching for visionaries, second in command leaders, integrators, and leadership team members, which is Accelerate. So that is who we are. Rachel, I am so excited to have you, my friend. I would love to have you introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you, Kristie. Thank you so much for having me here today. Who I am? Well, I'm a wife, a mother, a wife of a visionary. I think that's a big one. A mother of 3 entrepreneurs in the making.
Nice.
I love bridging the gap between visionaries and integrators. And the way I do that is as an EOS implementer, first and foremost. And I am diving more into this empowered COO. I published a book on it. I have a course coming out, and I coach COOs, integrators, second in commands, one-on-one to help them empower themselves.
I love that. Well, let's dive into that because, as you know, I'm a second in command coach too. So this is my passion as well. But you really found a correlation between like visionaries and addiction and then integrators and how they oftentimes kind of get enmeshed in this. So I would love to hear what have been some of the things that you have learned through your studies and your working with second in command leaders.
Sure. So yes, I love that we're kind of like parallel doing this, and we tend to have a lot of conversations where we help each other and we can both understand better. My angle, where I am coming from, is from a background in codependence recovery, working with spouses of addicts. And having experienced addiction in my personal life, and then becoming an EOS implementer, I saw these correlations between addicts and visionaries, and this need for more, this getting hyper focused on a goal, which causes extreme self-focusedness. It's like, I can only think about my goal. So anything that's standing in the way of my goal, I see as an obstacle or a distraction, and I want it to go away. And the danger is that sometimes the integrator can become that obstacle. And we can talk about that a little bit more soon. And so noticing all that, I reached out to Dr. Doug Brackman, who is the author of Driven, and he talks about the driven personality, which is basically, he identified the gene, the D2D4 gene alias that is mutated in people that are very driven. And what the mutation is that those people don't register dopamine. So they want more and more and more because they want that high, and they're not getting it because their body doesn't get the message that they've got it. And naturally, those people attract people who have the passion and the capability to bring other people's vision into reality. And I use the word enablers in the most loving term. I think it got a bad rap. It's like integrators are just so good as enabling visions to come into reality. Now, what happens is if somebody has like a classic addictive type of personality, even the best integrators will start becoming codependent and enmeshed, because if they're not aware of the behaviors that lead to that, and what codependency and enmeshment looks like is burnout, self-doubt, resentment, exhaustion. So a second in command, often they tell me, I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, I don't have confidence, I think my boss doesn't like me. And what they're not recognizing is that they fell into the trap of enmeshment and codependency.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And how that correlation can definitely happen. So I'm really curious from your standpoint then, what is your advice for someone who is kind of going through that type of relationship? Like how can they identify they're in that type of relationship?
So a good way to identify if you're there is if you're feeling burnt out. If you're feeling like you're giving 120% and you're only getting back, 80, if you're feeling like you're taking on too much, if you're feeling unheard, then it's a good time to pause and ask yourself, am I overcompensating? Did I lose direction? Am I afraid to stand up to the visionary? Am I afraid of rejection? Am I afraid I'm not enough? Because those are the things that lead to burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, the behaviors that cause burnout is people pleasing. When we try to please the visionary, the leadership team, and the greater good of the organization, many integrators tell me they feel like they're caught between a rock and a hard place. They're trying to please everything and they don't know how to get out of that, right? So instead of creating boundaries and saying, this is how much I can do, this is as far as I can go, this is what I'm capable of, this is where my role starts and ends. I find that there is a lot of confusion where integrators assume that their responsibilities are things that they are not. Maybe it's an ownership thing and you're taking it on. Maybe it's a leadership team members and you're taking it on. So turning into a caretaker, many integrators, tend to take on the role of being a caretaker for the visionary and the leadership team. And so I have this free assessment that tells you how likely you are to hit burnout as a COO or second in command, whatever. And it's very telling to me when I look at the results, because there's a certain belief, and I don't want to give it away because there's a question in there that's very telling, but there's a certain belief for some reason that second in commands believe that they are needless and wantless. And they don't have any expectations, needs, wants. They don't have to take care of their self-care. They don't have to put themselves first. And if you have that belief, you're going to burn out very fast.
Yeah, I can definitely understand what you're saying, because I think about that too with a lot of the clients that I'm coaching is, well, I have to put everybody else ahead of myself. Yes, but what are your needs? Like, we say this a lot, right, Rachel, that in order to take care of yourself, or I'm sorry, in order to take care of others, you have to take care of yourself. It's just like the flight attendant saying, please put your oxygen mask on first before you tend to others. So, somebody who's having difficulty with that, though, Rachel, that's a really hard place for them to be. How do they break out of that?
That's a very good question. And I kind of found this catchy way of encapsulating how you can empower yourself. And what I say is that integrators need to develop what I call ADD, but not the visionary kind. So the A stands for assertiveness. Assertiveness is in your posture and your communication. How am I asking? How am I responding? Am I being passive? Passive is where I'm not saying anything, but then I'm resentful inside, or I'm not speaking my truth. Mm-hmm. Am I being aggressive? Am I saying you're too much and just shutting people down? Or am I being passive aggressive? Passive aggressive is such a dichotomy, and I think 80% of the population falls into that trap without realizing. And that's when you say one thing and you mean another thing. Your actions and your speech don't align, and your communication. So let's say you're sitting in a leadership team meeting. Let's say you're sitting in a quarterly and the visionary is proposes something, and he looks at the integrator and he's like, are you in? And you say, yeah, I'm in, but you're rolling your eyes. Or you say, well, I guess it's me that's going to have to do it again. I don't have a choice. Well, I'm the one that takes care of everything. And that kind of cynicism that breeds itself in that you don't even recognize, that's passive aggressive communication. And visionaries just don't pick up on it because they're so self-focused. They're so focused on reaching their goals. They're less on emotion. I know we say the visionaries are more on emotion. They are more on their own emotions, but they're not good at tuning into others' emotions. They're more avoidant attachment. and integrators are more anxiously attached or seeking attachment. So the integrator wants validation. They want to be seen. They want to feel needed. They want to feel like they're doing a good job. And the visionary, it doesn't get that message. So we kind of have to recalibrate the expectations of this relationship and speak more assertively. Say what you mean and mean what you say, right? So that's the assertive part. The next thing is being decisive. And decisive is knowing what you want. And I know that can be asking for a lot from integrators when they've lived so much of their life of just being there for others. And I like to tell these integrators to imagine like they're on an island and nobody's there. They're all their roles and titles are gone, right? They're not a mom, they're not a wife, they're not a sister, they're not a friend, they're not an integrator. What would you love to do? Who are you? What are your values? What's your mission? How would you spend your time? And that's how they can identify their needs. Like, would you like to sit on the beach or would you like to go parasailing? Which one is more you, right?
Mhm.
And to look at their past accomplishments and really come up with an empowerment statement, really figuring out where do I shine best. And from there, they can empower themselves to delegate everything else, to say no to the things that they don't love to do, and really form a path to the last thing, which is discernment. So discernment is tapping into our intuition. Visionaries have the talent of vision. They can see the mountaintops. They can see 30, years ahead. Integrators have the talent of intuition. We can we can check our gut and say, does this feel right? The sad and challenging part is that intuition gets clouded by doubt, low self confidence, using data as a shield. So sometimes we delve too much into data because we're so afraid to say, I believe, or from where I see and I stand, this is how this should be done. So I encourage integrators to learn how to use I statements, to stand up for themselves, and really become discerning individuals because then they can serve best at their position. Visionary feels more fulfilled, integrator, and it's just so much better for everybody else.
No, I definitely agree with that, right? It's, regardless of what you call it, it really it's imposter syndrome that we're talking about too, right? Is that self-doubt that, am I doing enough? And am I doing what I should be doing? Or there has to be something more that I should be doing. I hear that a lot with clients as well. So, just owning who you are, accepting who you are, and bringing your best self to the table is really, truly powerful for people when they can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think imposter syndrome exists on both sides, right? Visionaries and integrators. And now when two people have imposter syndrome and they meet in a relationship, well, all hell breaks loose.
Mhm. Well, and I think you bring up a great point. Like everybody to some degree has questions. Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this enough? Is this not enough? And so it's really truly just how you handle that. If you internalize it and just fester on it, then it can become a very negative thing for you. You can also use imposter syndrome in a very powerful way. I know most people who know me know that I have created a persona for my imposter syndrome. Her name is Betty, and she is cruel and she is mean and she looks really cruel and mean too. And she says very nasty things to me, about that I'm not good enough and that you're not capable of doing these things. And who are you? You're not as great as these other people. All these negative things that some of us do tell ourselves. But I have learned to harness that into positive energy of, oh no, ma'am, you shut up, Betty, because I am not that, right? You are telling a lie. And now I'm going to take your lie and I'm going to propel myself forward and prove you wrong.
I love that. I love that twist on it because it's all about. I think the first step, what we can agree on, is for anybody that's caught in that doubt, is to develop their own inner coach. I call it, and that's step number one. You got to learn how to recognize your thoughts, observe them, and ask, "Is this true?"
Exactly.
And learn how to create an opposing voice and saying, what's my, because as a integrator or second in command or whatever, you're actually a coach and a facilitator for the rest of the team.
Yes.
And if we don't teach coaching and facilitation skills for the integrator, how do we expect them to lead everybody else? We
Exactly.
we don't expect the visionary to be a coach and a facilitator. They don't have a full spread of people right under them. It's the integrator when they execute that they, and one of the things I talk about is picking a persona. Like, how do you want to lead? Because it's hard. It's hard to always show up in a certain way, and especially if you have imposter syndrome. But if you can think of like, who do I want to be in when I'm 70? What will people say about me? How will I show up? And then when you're in doubt, like slip into that and talk out of that person. You can lead so much more easier because all that doubt falls away. And I think one big thing that's holding back second in commands is fear. And it's a fear of what will people think? What are people thinking? Maybe I'm not good enough. So when I coach people, I rarely even tap into the EOS tools. I don't look at your scorecard. I I ask you, what's your fear about this? And going and exploring that fear is what helps them empower.
Yeah. No, I can definitely understand that too. I think fear of failure is also a really big component too.
Absolutely.
What if I make the wrong decision and it things don't go well? I hear that a lot. Do you hear that as well?
All the time. I think it's the biggest fear because think about where that fear of failure comes from. Why are you so afraid to fail? Because what will people say about me?
Mhm.
So it comes back to the concept that integrators live on the side of external validation, seeking validation from the visionary. Am I doing a good job? From the leadership team, from the world, versus visionaries are more self-validating. They're like, I think I'm the best. They wake up every day. They think they have the greatest business. And if by 5 o'clock, things are not going so well, then they're like, tomorrow's gonna be another good day. They forgive themselves so easily. And we need to learn, you know, we need to take that and learn from that because the last chapter in my book, I finished my book with this concept of who is your puppeteer. If we value our self-value based on what the visionary thinks of us, what if the visionary had a bad day? So what if they walk in and they had a bad day, but you did a great job? So are you going to feel horrible because they're giving off bad energy and they're not responding well to you? Or are you going to center yourself and empower yourself and say, I did a good job regardless? So it's about learning how not to let other people be your puppeteer.
Oh, I love that. And I love what you just said about, the self-validating, and that we can learn from our visionaries. I think one thing that I've learned over the last, 10, 15 years that I've been sitting in these roles is sitting in an integrator seat. And then also now sitting in visionary is we can learn from one another. We are each other's coach. So if you're a second in command, an integrator, and coaching really truly is it's one of our superpowers. It's one of the things that we're usually really, really great at doing. And sometimes I don't think that we see ourselves as a coach to our visionary. We see our visionary as a coach to us. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I think in many ways we hold so much power. And when I coach seconds and integrators, I try to impart with them two parts. Number one is that really the visionary is craving somebody to stand up to them. They're being told yes by so many people, and they just want that somebody that has a boundary that could be firm, reassuring, because visionaries are like little kids in big bodies. They have a lot of great ideas and they're just so much fun and they're always looking for the next high. And they just want to be shown that line in the sand sometimes. They're actually asking for it. And if we don't see the signs and we're not able to stand up them in a loving way, I feel like the integrator in many ways is a parent in the relationship, a loving parent. And if you can't stand up to them in a loving way, they will either like run themselves over and self-sabotage, or they'll run away. So it's super important to learn that. And the second thing is we assume that visionaries walk in and they are self-validating and they're fine. But really, sometimes they doubt themselves too. And when we go so negatively, like I'm hearing way too many integrators bashing on visionaries. Oh, they're ADD, they're narcissistic, they're this, they're that. You know what? Like visionaries have feelings too. And we forget a lot about that. And how much further can you go? How many points will you get when a visionary comes with an idea instead of saying no, or you're shooting them out? Oh, you're so crazy. 30 more ideas. You look at them and you say, of course you have another idea. You're a visionary, and you celebrate it. And you say, let's look at it. And also what I teach them is take them along for the ride. The thrill is not in the destination. Every visionary will tell you that the day that they win, sell their business, make the big money, is their worst day of their lives, because the ride is over. And if you can take that visionary on that ride and say, so what would you do? How would you look? How many employees would have? And not only that, make the visionary realize the insanity of the idea. You don't need to tell them that's insane. Like I have visionaries all the time that be like, I'm going to double in profit in a year. And I'm like, that sounds like a very ambitious goal. How are you going to do that? Share with me. And they're sharing. And I'm like, oh, so you're going to hire 50 more people. So how are we going to get them? And I take them in and I'm like, how are we going to pay for it? And then they're like, oh yeah, that's a problem. And I'm like, yeah, that's a problem. So what are we going to do? And they're like, never mind. Not a good idea. Let's move on.
Yeah, no, I can't agree with that more, because going through my own visionary experience, I will tell you, one of the first things that will shut me down as a visionary is when I'm constantly told no, right? So it's one of the things I coach my clients on as well, is how can you approach this without saying no?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you say no to me 1,000 times, well, now I'm going to stop bringing visions and ideas for you because I know you're going to tell me no.
Right.
Right. And so I'll start bringing less and less to you. And then eventually I'll just stop bringing them all together. And I created something, what I call the visionary sandbox, right? So, okay, so I need us to be aligned here, that we're just playing in the sandbox. So what does the castle look like? Build it for me. Let me see what you're looking at. Oh, and that didn't work. So let's take down maybe that particular part of the castle. And do we just throw it away? Like we don't need to rebuild it, or do we just need to rebuild it to where it looks different? But we're aligned here that we're just playing in this sandbox. Nothing's actionable, nothing's permanent, because sand can be knocked down, it can be rebuilt, we can play with it, right? And it's not until we make a permanent plan that we're actually moving forward. So I really strongly encourage any and every integrator, second in command, that is listening. That is one of the biggest things is that will really change your relationship with your visionary, is to stop saying no and to get more curious and just ask questions that will lead them to their own answer. And you may learn a lot of things in that visionary sandbox while you're playing with them, and see where their head is at and why they have these thoughts, and what that looks like for them.
Yeah. And, I've been speaking a lot to visionaries lately because I want to hear their pain. I want to understand, why are we having, I think there's a unspoken crisis going on with so many integrator shifts, integrators feeling burnt out, integrators saying, I never want to work for a visionary again, because they just feel burnt. And then they say, I'm going to open my own business, but really their DNA is not to do that. And then they're spending so much time into something that they shouldn't do. A lot of fractional integrators. Why do visionaries love fractional integrators? I had to ask that question. And you know what the answer is? That a fractional integrator walks in and they set the terms and the conditions. They say, I'm going to work X amount of days. This is how much money I want. This is how long I'm going to stay in this engagement. This is what I'm going to do. And this is what I'm going to check out. And the visionary loves it. They don't have to take care of anybody. The visionary doesn't want to take care. They do not do caretaking very well. So when you can take care of yourself and you can show up confidently, that is like, you're speaking into them and they are loving it. And so when I talk to these visionaries and I say, what's your biggest pain point? They're like, I wish my integrator would just come more self-assuringly to the table. Tell me what you think. Tell me what plan you have. Tell me everything you tried, what worked, what didn't, and what you're going to do about it. Be solution oriented. Just today, another visionary I spoke to, he's like, I love my integrator. She's worked here such a long time. She just comes to me with a problem. And if I have to solve her problem, then I don't need an integrator. Then I am the integrator. But if she can come to me with a solution and she can ask my opinion and say, hey, is there anything that you see that I don't? Now I feel valuable. I feel seen. I feel like I'm playing in my unique ability in my sandbox. And then I can give her my thoughts. She has the confidence to either take it or leave it. And then she can go and execute.
Yeah. No, that's very, very true. And I think one thing I just feel the need to say is to be just cautious and aware, not to generalize every visionary and every integrator the same. So if you're a second in command leader and some these things may or may not work, you have to get curious and you have to get playful and try different things. Maybe something does work with your visionary, maybe some things don't, but what is that line that the two of you have together? How do you build trust together so that you can have open and honest conversations? Because not every person is exactly the same. Not every visionary has exactly the same traits and characteristics. Not every integrator or second in command has the same characteristics and traits. So just make sure you're playing and trying to understand how to work together. There are definitely some stereotypical or kind of well-known traits that we have, but just know that it's not straight across the board. Every visionary is different. Every integrator, second in command is different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the most underrated question, you mentioned trust, and I think that's a huge thing because many integrators are so frustrated. My visionary doesn't want to let go. And I said, did you ask him why? Did you ask them one very underrated question is, what do you need in order to let go? What would it take for you to trust me? We take for granted the trust in that relationship, but it's not for granted. So it's, what do you need in order to trust me? What do you need in order to let go? And they will tell you. They're not going to hold back.
Mm-hmm. Agree. I could not agree more. Rachel, I knew this was going to be a great conversation. I'm so glad that you came and shared your experience, your knowledge. I love every time we get to talk to each other. So thank you so much. We're going to end our conversation with rapid fire question. So here we go. If there is a woman from a past generation that you would like to honor, who would that person be?
That's a great question. So I'm going to go back to Queen Esther. What most people don't know is that my second name is Esther. And it's fascinating if you look about the story of Rachel, the matriarchs. She was very loving but she wasn't assertive. She didn't stick up for herself. And when you look at Queen Esther and the power and everything that she was able to succeed to do, it was because she spoke up and she was assertive and empowered. So that's my kind of hero or honor.
I love that. I'm studying Esther right now. She is such a courageous woman. So I love that that's your person. What about a woman of today that's in business, maybe leadership, maybe a second in command, that you would like to empower or that empowers you?
That is a very great question. So, a second in command that empowers me is Gwyneth Shotwell from, Elon Musk's COO. I mean, we can all learn from her. I read the book from Elon Musk, and it's just, you have to pick up the lines because the COO isn't the front page, right? But the way she pushes back at him, like he wants insane deadlines, and she shows him, she doesn't say no. She says, yeah, sure, we'll do it. And then it doesn't get done. And then he's like, yeah, this wasn't going to happen anyway. Right. She's learned not to spend time and energy in the wrong places. And I love that about her.
Oh, I love that too. That's amazing. What about a woman of a future generation that you would like to inspire? Who would that be?
I don't, I have 3 boys. So I don't know who their wives are going to be, but I want to inspire whoever they are in the universe that they should not be afraid to speak up in a loving, kind way for themselves. Because I think it benefits everybody around when we speak and we ask for our needs and we show up in our very best self.
Oh, I love that. You are going to be an amazing mother-in-law one of these days when the time is right for your boys. I'm so excited for you, friend. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on and having conversation. Y'all, I'm super excited. Thank you for watching. We will see you again next week. Have a great one.
Thank you so much.